Now recently I was on a binge on watching animated films of my childhood for various reasons, including filming my past YouTube videos, where I really thought it was time to make another video on one of my all-time favorite films. The one that I regard as one of the greatest in my book, which of course is Lilo and Stitch. Now I already made a video discussing certain situations surrounding the inevitable Horde remake, but I really wanted to make this video to discuss why Lilo and Stitch is such a great Disney classic that I consider to be the best, which of course does come with a lot of bias in that information, because for example, anyone who's followed this channel already knows that I have discussed many times that I am indeed Hawaiian, and how that actually makes films like Moana and Lilo and Stitch very special to me, feeling very represented in a studio that I held in high regard. And Lilo and Stitch came at a time when I was only not even a year old yet, living in Hawaii, just dipping my feet into the world of Disney, and boy was it ever so truly awesome. So what I want to do for this video is really dive in deep into the story and why it works, and explain some of the meanings that most of you may not know that pertains to Hawaii and my culture, and of course some of the special connections that I have to this film personally. Apart from the fun alien that we all know and love, and the adventure he goes on to grow, the main themes they wanted to present derive from family itself, ohana, and how that means nobody gets left behind. One of the strongest messages that Disney has ever presented in their films, and it really works well to portray that both in Lilo and Nani, two sisters just trying to survive in the world after their parents died in a tragic accident, where someone like Cobra Bubbles as a social worker is judging whether she is capable of caring for her in the struggles of trying to take care of your younger family when the situation is presented. It is very grim, and how that message of family is eventually extended to Stitch's story, as first perceived as a bad abomination who causes chaos wherever he goes, until we learn that there is truly more than meets the eye through Lilo's eyes, who sees through his flaws, struggling to find his place in the world, to find purpose, and finding that throughout this broken family to really sell the message of ohana that they wanted to present. And it's just truly beautiful to do so in a very comedic movie. Everything about this film truly captured the spirit of what many of us go through in life, finding purpose in family, and was one that took Disney stories to modern times. I mean, granted, there are plenty that did so in the past, but this was a true taste that was original, that was actually taking place of the year of its release, being modern, showing us things and environments that I recognize in my youth, and would still do so when they finish the remake eventually. And I actually love the film for doing that, for being such a huge recognizable story that stands out amongst other Disney classics that took place like hundreds of years before all of us were even born. It is truly amazing that Disney actually used watercolor backgrounds to evoke the bright look of a storybook and the art direction of Dumbo, where the ships themselves actually resemble marine life, and I really think those choices made the film stand out a lot more with the way that they designed things like the mountains and all of the flora and fauna that really captures the look of the island extremely well. So with all of that said, let us begin. Actually, before we start at the very beginning of the film, I would also like to share the beauty of how they actually tried to promote the film, making it seem like something new and using the classics that we all know and love like Aladdin and Beauty and the Beast to really show the new direction that Disney was taking, because the previous year of course brought us Atlantis, and that was steering clear well of musical adaptations, where this new style proved something that they could tell their stories in. It was something that director Chris Sanders thought it was a good idea to promote, and showed that they wanted to bring Lilo and Stitch name out in the public by just redoing every single Disney film with Stitch in it. It is just so wonderful how they thought of this cool idea from the classic Disney films that you know is essentially Disney by the book, now sort of ruined by this new character that you just want to see, where it is very nice to actually know in this context that the original actors of each character actually recorded just one single line for a trailer to sell this very film to the general public, and just very cute how the ladies actually like Stitch and not wanting to harm him, and a great starting point to where we are actually going to begin in the story. And from the very get-go, we are already introduced to something very unique from Disney's past, setting us in the Galactic Federation of a bunch of aliens joining together, arresting Dr. Jumba Jukiba for illegal experiments, especially the creation of 626 designed for complete destruction, where they both are sent to prison for breaking these very laws. Where as it turns out, he is actually designed very well and manages to escape, showing how smart and powerful he truly is as a creature, where it turns out his weakness is only water, where at the very last second it is discovered that a ship was going to land on Kauai when it seemed like it was going into the Pacific Ocean, where they had no choice but to send Earth expert Pleakley and free Jumba to actually find him and return him back home before he causes destruction on this poor, defenseless planet. It's a fun sequence that represents the stakes behind such characters and the challenges he presents to the plot of the film. And this is where the movie actually truly begins and introduces the wider public to Hawaii through the song He Mele no Lilo, and that is one I'm going to explain in full. Now, He Mele no Lilo is one of the two songs recorded by Kamehameha School's choir and Mark Keali'i Ho'omalu, where if you watch my previous video on the Lilo and Stitch situation, I actually share a relation to him throughout my line of my 5th great grandmother, where above all that I explained, I share the blood of many great ali'i or chiefs of Hawaii, especially that of King Kamehameha, where now you see how much more special that this particular film means to me through the course of my ohana. Where of course, for me particularly, I don't know much about him or have met him, but I just know through my relation of my very ohana with the data that is there, that it is truly a neat fact for you to know about and my connection to Lilo and Stitch. But anyways, back to the scene and the song is where we get to see Lilo for the first time, the Hawaiian girl who was too busy swimming in the sea who had hula classes the same exact day, where we'll eventually get to that point, but I want to explain this scene actually shows us, where they beautifully try to introduce the audience to Hawaiian culture with the hula, the dances that were done in the past to tell the stories of our people, as during such times Hawaiian was primarily oral history and not written, where here in the case of He Mele no Lilo, it uses pieces of other chants here and there, where it is mostly derived in large part from Mele Inoa no Kalakaua, a name for Kalakaua, the last king of Hawaii, where the choice for the song's name He Mele no Lilo is just to derive it for the very movie and a song for Lilo to introduce you to that very character. So of course, going in the song, it then starts with the first verse being Mahalo nui ke ali'i wahine o Lili'ulani o Kavohi ku, which gives praise to Lili'uokalani, the last monarch of Hawaii and the sister to Kalakaua, really trying to give reverence to the monarchy by referring to our last king and queen, where eventually the lyrics continue on with Ka pipi o mai o ke anue nui nai vai ho'olu'u a halike o le'e, and then pauses again before saying E nananamaka I ke au malama mai Hawaii akea I Kauai, which of course what they're saying is describing Hawaii as a whole, from the great arches of rainbows, the beams of colors unequaled, looking to the brightness of day, from the vastness of Hawaii to Kauai, really telling the audience of the unparalleled beauty that the islands bring and how we're trying to show the beauty and history of Hawaii to the audience, translated into the scene itself, where you're both seeing scenes intercut with the hula dancers and Lilo swimming in the ocean looking for something, the ocean being an important part with island life, and now you are understanding that with the lyrics itself. And I apologize if I seem kinda stale with me actually reading the lyrics out loud, but in the context it's very important. And then the lyrics start to pick up back again, where most of it is actually derived from Inoa no Kalakaua itself, and it starts with O Kalakaua he Inoa o kapua mai o Itala, kapua mai la ika mauna I ke kuahivi o Mauna Kea, ke a mai la I kilauea malama lama I wahine kapu, a ka luna o Oekaona I ka palikapu o ka aoea, ea mai ke ali I kia manu ua vehi I ka hulu o Kamamo, kapua nani o Hawaii o Kalakaua he Inoa. Basically explaining Kalakaua's name, where the main lyric of this part is saying Kalakaua is his name. And it translates into something like a flower that never fades into the sun. It blooms on the summit of Mauna Kea, burning bright at Kilauea, illuminating Wahine Kapu. Upon the heights of Oekahuna is the sacred cliff of Kauea. The name of Kalakaua is the beautiful flower of Hawaii, adorned with the great plumage of the mamo, a bird that is now extinct, that was used to create various capes of various great Hawaiian chiefs, where it just represents, like many great chants in Hawaiian history, telling a story to explain certain things in Hawaiian culture and their history, where of course it doesn't relate to the main character of Lilo, but more important for her and the movie's background to explain where we are, ending the song with the line He inoa no kalani kalakaua tulele, once again reiterating that this is a name song for Kalakaua and just shouting out cast forth at the very end. So explaining a little bit of that context out of the way is where Lilo gets into a little more trouble after the hula dance ends, because she ends up being wet from all the swimming. One where we see the weirdness of her very character, where everyone just finds strange because she went swimming to give a sandwich to her fish friend Pudge, where Nani wanted to give him a tuna sandwich, which is giving fish to fish, and she cannot have that, making Lilo a little late to get a peanut butter sandwich instead, because she thinks that this particular fish is one that controls all the weather, cementing her status as crazy amongst her peers, which she reacts violently to. And then their Kumu tries to calm him down when he says this line to him right here.
Girls
where what he said here was "Aole vala'ao," which basically says no speaking, trying to talk to Lilo about what is specifically happening, or more specifically in this conversation. Vala'ao means to speak, to talk loudly, and "aole" just of course means no. I bring this up because of course in a film that takes place in Hawaii, some of the language must also be used in the context, because of course it is still listed as endangered, and it's very important to more people to be aware of the context of our own culture in the movie and the characters themselves. I would also like to note that I'm not fully fluent in the language, so I'm not going to be your #1 expert on this matter, as there can be someone far better at explaining these things more accurately, because saying this isn't really the correct way depending on the certain context of what he's trying to convey and other situations that you would use, but at least you know that what they're trying to get across by having him say something like this. But back to Lilo, the class ends early because of her actions, and we start to see more of her relationship with her bullies like Myrtle, who think of her as weird, and more as a setup to contrast between her and Stitch that will set up really well with the theme of two outcasts from completely different worlds trying to find something meaningful in their lives. This finally introduces us to Nani as the older sister rushing back to find her sister who left when she told her to wait at this very spot, where we get to see a bit of her personality running around and acting very stressed for someone who has the burden of taking care of her little sister in her hands, and is quite troublesome for her own weird ways. It's a very interesting dynamic that sets up the main backdrop of their deceased parents who tragically died in an accident, introducing us to the big conflict within the social worker himself, Cobra Bubbles, a big figure who is judging whether or not Nani is fit to take care of her younger sister. The challenges they have to face throughout the film being that very dysfunctional, where they have a big fight over the chaos that they cause, which is something a lot of us can relate to. The core message that really attracted me to the very story, especially for someone who grew up on a place like Oahu in Kailua, even though I was less than a year old when the film came out, still representing that small town island life that I grew up with personally that they had on Kauai, where I myself had plenty of family members actually live there and visit Kauai, where of course I share that special connection to all of the islands themselves. And this is where they also make up, realizing that their situation is kind of grim in both cases and making amends, trying to apologize to be better in the state that they are in. A tough one to say the least, where they find Stitch's crashing ship crash out of the sky being like a shooting star, where Lilo makes this main wish, and the next day, to make her feel better for the world ostracizing her, Nani goes to adopt the dog to make her feel happy. The place where actually Stitch ended up because they thought he was a dog, where Lilo actually makes the instant connection with him, because like in the early scenes contrasting to these two weirdos who share similar stories, is why they actually connect very well because of the design of that, being out of the ordinary of course in this situation. Of course this is where everyone else actually freaks out, especially the lady at the dog shelter who brought him here because they thought he was dead, which is actually something I don't particularly understand, because why should they put him in a cage with a bunch of other dogs if they thought he was dead? That doesn't make any sense. But how should I know? I never really work at an animal shelter. I only volunteered a couple times before in my life and found no new dead dogs in cages with other dogs. But the main point here is that Lilo now gets Stitch, and now they get to interact with each other, where he spots Jumba and Pleakley, who found him while beginning their very mission, thus beginning the adventures of both characters and the conflicts they will eventually face, making Lilo a lot more happier, where both weird and weirder join together, where he performs various atrocious acts like stealing Myrtle's bike while being watched by Jumba, giving the laydown on what will happen when Stitch finds a big city, where of course after that fact is laid down, they actually reveal that they are on Kauai, where Lilo says this line.
It's nice to live on an island with no large cities.
It's a funny scene that really throws in the conflict that the character has to face on his own adventures with Lilo and struggling to keep up with him, while Elvis actually plays in the background. And yes, I did actually forget to mention Elvis a little bit earlier in the beginning, where throughout the film Elvis plays an important role because he is indeed Lilo's favorite artist and really adds a lot to her character because of how much Elvis actually did in regards to movies and music here, with of course his historic performance here back in the 70s being the highest rated program of the very year, and of course films like Blue Hawaii. And after this is where we finally get introduced to Nani's job, and of course her boyfriend David, where I would also like to add he was a great addition to the movie, bringing more of that local flavor to the screen, and how they designed him similar to his actor Jason Scott Lee, who's of course of Chinese and Hawaiian descent and starred in various Disney movies, and of course started out back in Back to the Future 2 as one of Griff Tannen's henchmen, then of course moved on to Disney with Mowgli in the Jungle Book, Bori Khan in the Mulan remake, and most recently the Doogie Howser reimagining Doogie Kamealoha, which is on Disney Plus, where where he and Tia both help the directors add dialogue that is more authentic to the way that we talk. You know, both him and Tia were actually raised in Hawaii and sprinkled a little bit of pidgin here and there so that they could get the tone just right for the story that takes place mostly in the rural of the 4 main island. But back to the story is where Nani kinda gets fired because Stitch proves to be a ruckus, trying to destroy everything he sees as it was built into his personality. It is this part of the movie where you get to see this constant struggle with him trying to do what he was designed for while freaking everyone out, while only Lilo can understand and tolerate what he does, where this is where Jumba spies on him and points out of what happens when his purpose is or has not been fulfilled, translated after making a makeshift town and destroying it. It's an interesting concept to show us what our purpose is in life, what happens after we don't have anything else to do or strive for, after what we do for so long is done or not important anymore, where he finds the ugly duckling, which is reflected on his very character being lost but eventually being found, finding purpose within his family, the important point that this movie is trying to send. And then we see more trouble enter the picture where Cobra Bubbles actually finds out that Nani lost her job and now expects their new pet to be a straight model citizen in order to keep them for what they have and not lose it at all. The constant struggle of the Ohana that continues that tasks Lilo to help Stitch to become a model citizen away from the destructive behavior while Nani tries to attempt to get a new job. And it's all perfectly captured within Elvis's Devil in Disguise, showcasing the trouble that they would have to go through while Nani poorly attempts to actually get a new job while he screws everything up. I really think this is a perfect comedic aspect to represent the struggle that many of us might have with siblings or dogs and work life and whatnot, where I really just love the scene where Stitch becomes Elvis impersonator, turning a ukulele into a guitar, performing his heart out for such passion before turning back into Monster at the beach because his photos were getting taken. This turns the whole mood back into sour as nothing can actually turn right for any of them, losing every opportunity for a new job and Stitch causing chaos. Where this is a scene where David sees their depressed state and has the idea to cheer them up with some surf, where ladies and gentlemen, this is the scene with one of Disney's greatest songs ever made, Hawaiian Roller Coaster Ride. It's a song that anyone could get into for its lyrics both in Hawaiian and English, beginning with the affectionate greeting of aloha e, and then transitioning into the singer's love for the sea and surfing demonstrated in these scenes where they're having such fun, except Stitch of course, who does not like water, at least in first and of course of the movie. Just including the lyrics about the love of the sea and the thrill that surfing provides creates a call to action to you out there to Avikipi mai lohi lohi lave mai kupapa he inalu, which means hurry up, don't delay, grab your surfboard, flying by on the Hawaiian roller coaster ride. The main 2 words that you need to know out of this scene that you see come up a lot more often when learning Hawaiian is Avikivi, which means to be quick, and is also the name of a plant endemic to the island of Molokai, where Papa He'inalu is actually surfboard. And this is where the 2 lines repeat with the full Hawaiian chorus in play, where to break it down slowly, they are saying Avikivi mai lohi lohi lave mai iku Papa He'inalu pi'i na nalu la la ha la ha o ka moana hanupa nupa la 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 ikala hana hana meki ka hoene ike pu'e one hele hele ma tatu e Hawaiian roller coaster ride. Where hearing this, you might actually guess some of the words meaning other than the first line of course, in Moana if you actually heard, so you already know it has to do with the ocean a bit, where it is continuing that call to action and informing you that big waves are breaking and the ocean is swelling. The sun is warm, so come on, let's go out and enjoy the Hawaiian roller coaster ride. And then they get to the second verse of the scene, which is full of little tidbits of Hawaiian pidgin and surf terms like hang loose, hang ten, how's it shake a shaka, no worry, no fear, ain't no biggie brada, where you can already get kind of that meaning because it is in English but in a different form, hence pidgin, where I myself feel embarrassed about speaking because I hardly do it, but I do know it. Where it's just in this verse they're saying, hey, no worries, let's just ride some waves, exactly what they're doing in this very moment, where the song itself is more geared to Stitch himself saying, hey, come on, let's have some fun in the sun, where he's learning a lot bit to enjoy, much to the surprise of Jumba. The lyrics of the song repeat to show you how much Stitch has learned to enjoy it, abruptly ending when Jumba completely tried to capture him after being dragged under the sea, being finally rescued before Cobra Bubbles comes back into view and kinda states that Nani cannot handle taking care of Lilo and will be back the next day to take her raised by someone else. A heartbreaking moment for her where she cared deeply for her sister and has the worst possible fate imaginable for someone like her being different than the rest, for at the very least Nani understands her because they are family. This is also where you see Stitch's mixed feelings come back into play because of his purpose and where he sees David delivers this very line.
I really believed they had a chance. Then you came along.
It kinda puts the blame on him a little bit for the choices and chaos that he caused a little while ago, where despite connecting with Lilo and everything else, the public eye has not been good for him, where he slowly and sadly walks up looking at a group of ducks reflecting the story he heard about earlier to really strengthen his entire journey in the film. A somber moment where he sees Lilo and Nani together talking about something, one where we see the perspective on Nani at the last time they would probably be together. She cannot bring herself to say those words that needs to be said, instead trying to comfort her where she thinks she'll get a job when Nani actually brings her close to sing Aloha Oe, the song made by Queen Liliuokalani herself. It's the song that Elvis actually also sang in Blue Hawaii, which of course is important for Lilo in her character, and I will use clips from that to show you that as well. And to put this into context within the film, the song was created in 1878, 15 years before she was overthrown, where she was a princess and her brother was king. A misconception about many people say sometimes about how she actually wrote this as a goodbye to Hawaii when she wrote it during her imprisonment, unable to uphold her duties as queen to her very people and the nation, which wasn't the case at all, and was actually written because she saw a young woman give her male lover a lei flower as they parted ways at Maunawili Ranch in Kailua, my own hometown of course, prompting her to write a Mele Ho'opoipo, a love song capturing the tender goodbye she had witnessed, where in fact the male lover was actually rumored to be James Harbottle Boyd, a military official who actually served Kalakaua and Liliuokalani, where it is very similar in the case of a goodbye to loved ones in family like Nani is doing here to Lilo when she sings the main chorus, which of course the lyrics of this part really state a farewell with a heartful goodbye until we meet again. A song that also touches Stitch, who still feels plenty of regret and knowing the case of what is going on with Nani and Lilo, where Stitch sees the picture of Lilo's parents and how they died in an accident, and how Lilo asks the same question to Stitch knowing why he actually cries at night, where they are in fact the same person in different forms, and shows how much he understands why Stitch is destructive because he has nothing. No family, no place to call home, leaving us with the main message when Lilo says that Ohana means family, and family means nobody gets left behind. The most powerful line in the entire film, and something that strikes a chord in his very character. It's also in this moment where Stitch sees the ugly duckling again, and sees that within his very himself, feeling so lost for who he is, a nobody that people really hates, and one that just really needs love to see that, and why the film works really well for what it is. And then when the scene transitions back to Jumba and Pleakley, they get fired by the High Councilwoman, who wants to send Ngantu to get him back instead for their failures. This is also where Jumba gets the idea to do it his way because they are now free for the first time being, where Stitch tries to reiterate this to Jumba that he needs this purpose in his life while he says otherwise, and begins this new chase where Nani gets a new opportunity from David to get a job, and things actually might at the very moment look on the upside for the short time until Jumba actually manages to break into their home, where Stitch runs scared and chases after and drags Lilo along with him. This is where chaos actually consumes everyone because Jumba tries to destroy everything in their house, where actually funny enough in the same moment he also knows of the existence of Elvis, which also reminds me of Men in Black, where they sort of revealed that he was an alien who went back home instead of dying on Earth, and a real nice touch to know how aliens just love Elvis's music. I really love this scene because of the interactions with Jumba and Stitch really throwing things at each other, especially Stitch shoving cars into his face which honk like a squeaky toy, but also ends up in disaster when they play hot potato with a gun that explodes and destroys everything in their home. And this is where everything once again ends up in a terrifying state for everyone involved, including Cobra Bubbles getting angry at the ruckus, blaming Nani for this, while Lilo escapes and tries to find Stitch, now knowing he's an alien like him, angry at him for hiding the truth and what he had done until they both get captured. It was just that in this scene, for her case, knowing what she had originally in her family, got her so angry at him because of what destruction he is capable of, knowing now that he is an alien too, and how everything just got messed up to a significant degree when he was introduced, and how Nani sees how Gantu decides to capture them both for some fucked up reason because he can't care about alien life on the planet, while capturing Stitch, dragging Lilo along with him, making Nani extremely scared and losing her sister what looks like for good this time. A moment where Nani also finds out that Stitch talks to and yells at him to try to find out what is happening, finding answers to while Jumba tries to capture him. It also turns out to be a sad moment where they just tell Nani that they're only here for Stitch and cannot do anything for Lilo, where they cause her to cry out, recognizing her failure to trying to protect and take care of her younger sister, as that's all she wanted to do in her life after their parents died. And it's also a moment where Stitch tries to talk to her, saying about Ohana.
Ohana means family. Family means nobody
gets left behind.
or forgotten.
This is an important moment for his character arc to realize what is important to him, how he actually found something to give him meaning in his life through Ohana and what that actually means to us, the important moment that connected me to the film, and of course appreciating my Ohana. Like in Lilo's case, it's very messy, but it still is something that I'm very proud in my life and very powerful enough to convince Jumba that they should help Lilo out. A moment where they decide to pull out the big guns and use their ship to chase down Gantu across the island or islands in this scene. An infamous scene that was also changed from the deleted one after 9/11, because if you look at the original, you can see why this is changed from the get-go. In the original, they hijacked a 747 from Lihue airport, which I didn't know they actually had 747s to go there to begin with, where they then chase him down to the streets of Honolulu, where you can kinda literally see them scrapping the sides of buildings in a 747, the same type of jet that was used in that very instance in real life, where you can see why it was absolutely best for them to remove that scene because of that idea, and also because of how they get there and what they do, which of course doesn't logically make sense in the film, where they actually came on an alien ship that used sort of the design choices of the film that was going for, and where this would actually ruin likely all of that. But anyways, we're back to the main plot where Gantu actually discovers and tries to knock them out of the sky, traversing through the mountainous terrain of Kauai, where we see the ice cream guy who never wins. Like seriously, he really does get disrespected the most out of this movie for a dude who just wants ice cream but never gets it. Like come on guys, he deserves a happy ending at least. And later we see Stitch get knocked off by Gantu's ship and into the main street of the Big Island, where he gets this idea to use gasoline truck, driving it into Hawaii Volcanoes National Park and using it for the best scene in the entire movie. Like there's no greater actual moment than Stitch launching himself and screaming yeehaw as he tries to destroy Gantu's ship and rescue Lilo in the process, making amends because of the fact that they are a family, where Stitch goes ahead and saves Gantu as well, and David gets awakened by this big wave with all of them on board and gets tasked to send him back to shore. This is where the Grand Councilwoman actually arrives, disappointed at the performance of all of them trying to capture Stitch, where Stitch actually points out himself of his name and shows her his family and what he actually found, that he actually did all on his own, that he mentions it's broken but still good, similar to the things I've talked about when it comes to my Ohana. In contrast to Stitch, it's very big when looking at the broader picture, and also broken in the case of Stitch, but also still good. It's good because that's who we are. We are family, and that's what matters to us. And it's the scene where Cobra Bubbles also points out to Lilo his adoption certificate, which he gladly accepts for the laws that they're supposed to follow, where it's no different that they follow here on Earth or whatever, where we also discovered that Cobra Bubbles also worked for the CIA and was there with the aliens many years ago to save the Earth, and had hair. A twist that I definitely saw coming throughout the film, but very nice nonetheless that he actually helped them out in the end after almost taking Lilo away, trying to actually restore the broken family and piecing them back together even greater than what they were before. A nice note to actually end the movie where everything is happy and the day is saved. It's also where she forces Jumba and Pleakley to stay on Earth, where they themselves actually officially become a part of the Lilo and Stitch Ohana as well. The perfect ending to this movie on the happiest of notes with the cover of Elvis's Burning Love. And this is where I mentioned this is a great way to end things, where they restore the house and showing the family having such fun times throughout the entire year. A perfect ending that I couldn't ask for anything better than the greater moments of life that has to offer us with our own Ohanas. Knowing how much this extends beyond that of related but also adopted, and finally showing us the credits of various places that they went, like Graceland because of Elvis, and other various moments in life like vacations and school, before ending it showing Stitch officially added to the picture of their very family. This is also great when you get to know that this was added because the team actually had enough budget after fixing the 9/11 scene to finish out the film to really sell how they actually became a family. All in all, Lilo and Stitch is truly one of my most favorite animated movies of all time, taking place in my home. I mean, I didn't grow up on Kauai specifically, but all of Hawaii and my history is there and truly is important to me, presented within the most important aspect of family itself, and how that means that nobody gets left behind no matter what. And it's not just the film I love, I also love the entire series as well, to expand upon that world much further with the characters that I take to heart and will continue to do so for the rest of time, until the remake eventually ruins that. And now with this video, I hope it actually shows you a little bit more context to why this film is special to me, where now you know through my extended Ohana that relatives of mine indeed actually worked on it, because that's just how big my Ohana is and my connection to Hawaiian history, where I hope it inspires other people to review and take a look at the film with this this new very perspective. The works of Mark Ho'omalu and Kamehameha School's choir, bringing in the Hawaiian music, and of course Chris Sanders and Dean DeBlois for making this film. It was truly breathtaking in all levels, and I couldn't actually thank him enough for making that. I wish I could say more, but that's all I really wanted to say about this and why this film was so perfect from beginning to end. So mahalo for watching this video, and with that said, until we meet again, a hui ho.